Let's talk about how we can deploy a simple web application to a server using Google Firebase on a custom domain. The process is going to be very simple and anyone can do it in a matter of minutes. So we're going to start with creating a GitHub repository. Then we create a web app using Next.js with two example pages. The first page will be our main frontend page, and on the second page, we output example JSON data, just like a typical API would. This way, we not only show static pages, but we also include some server-side code. We can securely hide credentials or sensitive information there. Finally, we let Google Firebase handle the majority of the deployment. And to finish, we map DNS records to direct traffic to the domain of our choice. So let's begin. I have a brand new account set up on GitHub, and this is a dashboard view where I can create my first empty repository. I give it a name, my next project, and click on Create a new repository. Then I'm interested in remote command, which I'm going to use in my local environment when we create a new project. Once that command is applied, we can then make any changes and upload them to the repository we've just created. Now it's time to create a Next.js example application. We use a command npx create next app, and we let default settings for any prompt messages. Once project is created, we go to the home page, which in this case is page tsx, and we simply modify the code to output our Next.js project text. We can now test our changes by running npm run dev command, and we open URL on port 3000 to see our text in the middle. Now we want to create an example API response. I create a folder pages and inside API. Then I create a file called example.ts. Inside, I simply create a function where I have access to request and response objects. Without any complex logic, I just want to output example JSON response. Once that's created and saved, I can now open the same page, but this time we open localhost 3000 port /API/example. And we see our JSON example output. Now that we've finished our changes, we need to add them into the repository. I run git status to see what changes I've made. And I use git add to add those two files I've modified. I run git commit with some quick description, and as a last step, I need to link my current Git repository to the one from GitHub. That's where I use my git remote command copied from earlier stage. And finally, I can push my changes so that they are visible in GitHub website. Let's open now Google Firebase website. We log in for the first time and we see this homepage. We click on Create New Project and we give it a name, My Next Project. Once initial setup is complete, we continue and go from a menu into app hosting. Inside there, we need to make sure we are linked with correct pay-as-you-go subscription. We can now initialize app hosting. First, we need to authorize Firebase to access our GitHub list of repositories. After that, we have access to the next steps where we select name of the repository first and then a branch name. After giving a friendly name for the Google project ID, we click Finish and Deploy. First deployment takes a bit of more time to complete, but when it's finished, you can start immediately using it by URL provided from Firebase. While we wait for the first deployment to complete, we can now set up our custom domain for this project. We click on a small text called Manage Domains, and we see a list where the first record is a URL generated by Google Firebase. We click on Add Custom Domain and we enter our domain. Once we continue, the system will generate DNS records for us to modify inside our DNS provider. In my case, I'm hosting my domain in GoDaddy domain providers, and I need to go there and enter cname, txt, and a record values. That way, we point traffic to Google's servers, and at the same time, we verify that we own a domain. Once DNS changes are propagated, which takes up to an hour, we click on Verify button for Google Firebase to validate our changes. If everything is complete, we can now open our domain to see the project is running. We also check if API example path is working and our whole setup is complete. In summary, we've just created a web application and deployed it to a custom domain. We can add changes to our project, push commits at any time, and because of auto rollout enabled by default, those changes are automatically deployed. As an example use case, I've recently worked on a project where my custom domain was used to confirm users' email address. I also had to add another route where someone could update users' password with a simple form and token attached. Overall, I would recommend the approach I just showed to anyone who's trying out new things, proof of concepts, personal websites, or even more advanced ideas. The cost of hosting via Firebase, I would say, is quite low, and as you can see, the time it takes to get the project going is relatively quick. I hope you found this information useful. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.